You're listening to Soundside. I'm Libby Dankman. To bus or not to bus? That is the question facing many Puget Sound commuters during the Revive I-5 project. From now through 2027, lanes over the Ship Canal Bridge in Seattle will be closed on I-5, making an already challenging traffic situation worse. The Washington State Department of Transportation has encouraged travelers to Seattle and through Seattle, especially commuters, to consider using the bus instead of clogging the freeway with more cars. On its main page about the project, WSDOT calls transit the best, most reliable way to get around. Meanwhile, Mayor Katie Wilson has called for a dedicated lane for the crosstown Route 8 bus on Denny. To discuss this and many other changes that may be coming to mass transit in our region, Michelle Allison is here. She's the general manager of King County Metro, which means she oversees the King County Metro bus and water taxi, in addition to the operation of Sound Transit light rail trains, so personnel, maintenance workers, things like that. Michelle Allison, thank you very much for being on KUOW.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having us, Libby.
So we talked about the fact that there are lanes closed on I-5 across the Ship Canal Bridge right now. Those are going to change which lanes are closed, but the fact of the traffic mess is going to remain for the next couple of years. What is Metro doing in order to gear up for that?
We've been working really closely with our transit partners, with WSDOT, with Sound Transit, Community Transit, anyone who can provide an alternative to the traffic that is very real with a project the size of Revive I-5. It's a very significant effort. It's essential and it has impact. No one wants to sit in traffic. And I think the reality is that we are traffic when you sit in your single occupancy vehicle, right? Like the goal for all of the agencies and the partnership was to provide as many opportunities that really help reduce that congestion. So we've added 50 to 100 trips to our system, understanding every day the traffic patterns look a little different. So we'll put more service in where we see congestion happening. We worked really closely with the city of Seattle and our neighborhood partners to extend the bus-only lanes on Aurora, and also tracking the data every day. What does it look like? Are people normalizing on a certain pattern or behavior? How do we communicate? Half of the challenge is really telling people how transit works for them. So really working on our customer-facing communication so people know the options available to them, because everyone's commute's just a little bit different and it needs to work. And so we want to provide as much information as possible so people can make a transit choice. The more people use transit, the better it'll be for the whole. And this is a long haul that we're on. So we really want people to make that choice and then stay transit riders after I-5 construction's complete.
Anecdotally, just since the closure started a few weeks ago, I've certainly noticed more people on Sound Transit trains. But do you have data yet about whether ridership is up on the buses or what's happening with those ridership patterns?
Yep, we are seeing absolutely, as you're noting anecdotally, we're seeing fuller park and rides earlier in the morning. So people working to kind of get ahead of that congestion. Our ridership is up 4% over this time last year, so definitely related to it. And you're seeing congestion in certain routes that we would anticipate where they travel through the corridor more. We're seeing more ridership, which is good. We want that to be the case. And we also recognize that we are probably going to continue to need to focus on investing more service. So we do service changes twice a year, and that's where we can make adjustments to the system. And we have some reliability investments that we're planning to make in our March service change, which get to the additional demand in this corridor for Revive I-5.
So we're going to ask some audience questions throughout this conversation, and I just wanted to throw a couple in because, something that I hear from some transit skeptics is I would take the bus or the train more often, but sometimes I don't feel safe in certain situations. So these are questions that came in through our Soundside text club for you when folks heard that you were going to come on the show. So here's one listener who wrote in who said, when I worked downtown, I often had to catch the bus on 2nd or 3rd, but I didn't feel safe at those stops. Has safety improved in the last year or so? And what are you doing for safety, especially at bus stops? Obviously we had this terrible situation in Rainier Beach on Friday with 2 teenagers shot at a bus stop. Safety at bus stops is top of mind right now for people. What can you tell us about that issue and what Metro's doing?
Thank you for the question. And Friday's events were certainly tragic, and our hearts go out to the family and the whole community, those kids who are back in school processing just such a really, really hard moment. And Metro's really committed to being a partner in these conversations. Safety is our number one priority, both for our employees and for our riders. And we are organizing our work really around three elements that contribute to a successful transit system. And the first one starts with safety. And that is both the conditions that we maintain and also the experience of the individuals, the operators and the riders. So when you walk to your transit stop, is it well lit? Do you have information on when your bus is coming? Are there sidewalks for you? Are there bushes that make shadows, that make it uninhabitable? Sort of that those feelings and conditions of safety are really important to us. And when you get on the coach, does it feel safe? Do you feel like you are, you know what to expect on that experience? And then the same when you travel to your final destination, that whole experience is safety. And we are working to increase transit security officers. So we have 270 of them across our system now. Our transit metro police are a part of the sheriff's office. They're also an incredible partner on having that police activities. Sometimes you need to have a police presence if something escalates, and we will call them. Both our transit control center, our operators, and our public are encouraged to engage with Metro Transit Police. If you see something that's against our code of conduct, we want to hold people responsible. How you behave on the coach matters, and we have an expectation for how people engage on the system. And when that expectation is not met, we want to hold people accountable because everyone deserves a safe trip. We also are doing a lot of work around the Capitol environment. There's lighting, there's other aspects that really matter to safety. And so that is also part of what we're doing with our community members. So really coordinating services so we get a quick response when needed is also part of what we're doing. Working really closely with our ATU partners on a regional transit safety task force that really produced an action plan for us. So we have a clear path that was both reflected in our budget investments and where we're going to go in bringing on operator partitions, new technology, and more resources for folks who ride our system to call for support or to show us where there's a problem that we need to go work to address.
I know operator partitions have been a big topic of conversation, and some of them recently rolled out on some new electric buses recently. It's been more than a year since Sean Yim, the driver who was fatally stabbed in the U District, was killed right down the street from us, really close to where I'm talking right now at the KUOW studios. And you mentioned the Transit Safety Task Force following his killing. What else are you looking at for driver safety issues? And tell us more about the partitions and how they are being put into place.
Yeah, this was a really close collaboration. When we experienced the murder of Sean Yim, it really emphasized just the need for speed for the discussion to move and to progress into implementation. So we had regular conversations with ATU and the vendor community to understand what partitions may be available for our system. We have a lot of different types of coaches, and so you cannot just have one brand of partitions and put them on everything. You sort of have to customize them to meet the individual needs of each type of fleet that's in our system. But one thing that I want to really impress here is we also wanted to hear from the operators. What do they need? It's their working environment. It's their office, right? They're rolling office all day long. What works for them? What's comfortable? Our operators have incredible relationships with riders, and we didn't want to take away from that moment. I know when I get on the bus, the best thing is when I can say, hi, how you doing? How was that weekend? I know my operator. They know me. That's part of making a community on the coach. And we did not want these partitions to take away from that. And so we had to do some really careful conversation with our operators and our vendors and our engineering team to design something that balanced their safety, of course, paramount, and the experience that they have with customers and customers with them. So we have a first start to that as you noted, is out on the street in some Gillett coaches out in South King County. We are customizing those in-house. We have brilliant engineers and folks in our vehicle maintenance space that are making them work so that there is a better barrier so you can still hear and engage and see, but that no one can reach around or open the partition and get to the operator. So it's like a little mini cockpit, if you will, but still the operator is able to engage with the door to get in and out and help folks with ADA needs as well.
And is this like a clear plastic kind of partition, or what does it look like?
Yeah, it's glass. So it's stronger than plastic. We wanted something that was more durable. So making sure that that product, that glass product is see-through, but also doesn't bounce off a bunch of light, and then does have a steel bottom to it so that it has some more protection as it goes all the way to the ground, all the way to the ceiling, and then all the way to the windshield. Again, this is a starting point. We're going to learn as we go and make adjustments to those barriers so that we continue to refine them and make them as the best product possible as we continue to deploy these throughout our whole fleet.
I'm talking with Michelle Allison, GM of King County Metro, about all of your bus questions. So we had listeners write in asking questions about, for example, where is my bus? The next listener who wrote in, Theodore, lives in Queen Anne and takes the 62, 40, and 5 bus, and the E-bus in a pinch, Theodore writes. And Theodore asked, why can't Metro provide a decent app that shows arrival times more precisely and effectively? But what's your response to Theodore in terms of providing that service to know when the bus is coming?
Theodore, thank you for writing. You're writing some of our most popular used routes on the system, some of our most frequent routes on the system. And I just want to acknowledge it's super frustrating. And I've been there, standing there, looking at my one bus away, and it's not coming, and it said it was supposed to come. We have some work to do. We're in the middle of trying to ensure that what our systems and schedules and buses who leave the bases, that actually matches the experience out in the field with the technology and what the technology is saying. Sometimes there is a mismatch, and what is scheduled and is says to be coming doesn't actually leave the base for one reason or another, and it doesn't get updated and picked up in real time and distributed out in the technology. It can leave for a missed trip or a ghost bus. You've probably heard that term before. And these are real customer impacts that we want to minimize. And so we're working hard to have better real-time information and also to streamline them to every platform. So you're getting the same information on one bus away as Google, as Metro's TripAdvisor app. So we've got some work to do. We see that. We know it impacts you and may make for a frustrating experience. I've certainly been there myself. And we'll work to continue to use what you think is easy and available technology sometimes becomes a lot harder in application for a system of our size, but the expectation is real and people should be able to have that reliable experience on whatever app they use. We're going to get there. We know it's a problem. We're making gains, but we still know it's out there in the system.
I'm talking with Michelle Allison, General Manager of King County Metro. We're going to be right back with your questions about, yes, the infamous late bus, the 8 bus, and plans for possibly a future bus lane on Denny to help that bus along. That's what Mayor Wilson wants, at least. And we are going to talk to Michelle Allison about that after a quick break right here on KUOW. Welcome back to Soundside. I'm Libby Dankman, and I'm talking with the General Manager of King County Metro, Michelle Allison, about your bus questions. The east to west routes really get people worked up, Michelle, and I think that the 8 bus is kind of emblematic of this. This is from Lower Queen Anne to Mount Baker, but a lot of that route is the east to west across the city, notorious for both drivers and transit riders to be a tough, direction to move across Seattle. So the Urbanist reports that Route 8 averaged more than 6,000 daily riders in 2025. Mayor Katie Wilson rides the 8. One of her earliest executive orders was to sign that order to design and install one dedicated bus lane along the 8 on Denny. What do you make of that plan, and how is Metro responding?
Couple of things there. I think the power of speaking up and the experience of the late 8 advocates was really impressive to watch as a transit leader in this region, watching people sort of demonstrate their lived experience by racing that coach and beating that coach was absolutely brilliant, and some really creative activism. But it really draws a line and illuminates what it means to have a transit system that's working inside a congested corridor like the one that the 8 does, because you're going to move at the speed of traffic if you don't have any bus prioritization. And that, I think, is what the mayor is saying, is get that bus some dedicated pathways so that it can show its value of moving more people than a single occupancy vehicle, and give people a reason to choose that bus route, get out of that car, because it will save them time. It's very hard to convince people to get on public transit if there's no benefit. And we know time, it has value. And so we are excited to work closely with the city to provide some prioritization for the Route 8, which is a very heavily used route in our system and has a lot of investment in it. We've had this challenge for a while, so Metro's put a bunch of service hours, that's sort of our currency, into the Route 8, but it's not efficient. And so if we have some dedicated pathways and also other transit priority features into that corridor, it actually will become a more efficient and more appealing corridor, and we're excited to bring that to light.
Is there a risk that this just pushes that traffic and intensifies the traffic for everybody else? Is this, a consideration as the buses are whizzing by that maybe we see the Denny just clogged with more cars?
There could be. We know that the eastbound Denny Way between Fifth Avenue and Fairview Avenue is the real crunchy part, sort of the bottleneck. We also know geographically there's not a whole lot of options in some of these really tight places in Seattle, just based on how we're configured with I-5 and the water and some of our other really restricted corridors. So sure, there could be that risk. I would also hope that transit becomes such a desirable alternative that people start using it. The more people get out of their cars and onto the transit system, the better it is for the whole. And that's what we're here to provide, is that transit benefit. And so I would like to think that when you see those buses whizzing by, you say, I want to be on there instead of in my car. And that's the choice you make.
Listener Jordan is one of the many who wrote in about specific requests for new routes. So I am going to list some of these, and then I'm going to ask you a more general question about how do you decide, what new routes to establish. So here's our service to listeners to get you individually lobbied for these routes. Listener Jordan is asking for a direct bus from Ballard to Capitol Hill, please. Jordan added a please. Another Soundside texter said, I wish there was more east-west buses on the north side so I could get from Maple Leaf to Finney and Ballard easier. Sounds like we have a strong Ballard transit contingent in our listening audience. Michelle Allison, General Manager of King County Metro, I am putting these requests directly to you and asking, how do you decide where these routes go and where the next new route might go?
I love it. And your listeners are really smart, and those who use transit are right on. East-west connections throughout the county, not just Seattle, but countywide are hard, and we need to continue to invest in them. This is a process. Like most things in transit, it takes a very long time. So again, we do service changes twice a year, and those service changes are informed by work that's been done over a multi-year period, where our community engagement and transit planners go out into a service area. For example, if there's light rail coming online. So South King County is a great example of where we recently did this. We knew that light rail was being extended to Federal Way. That light rail investment gives us a bunch of opportunity both to feed the light rail line and then to create and service routes that don't exist today, or to add frequency to ones that do, to make better connections to get more riders onto the system. So we go out to the community. We set up mobility boards, we work with local jurisdictions, we work with individual riders, we go on the coach and give surveys. And for about 2 years, we work hand in hand with that service area to design a network that gets as much investment as possible. We know that we don't have enough resource to do everything all at once. So we really try to identify what gives us the most investment for those service hours that we want to put out into the system. Sometimes it means we cancel a route to use those hours somewhere else. That's a hard discussion. Sometimes we add frequency because what people want is, 7-minute to 10-minute service, or we create those new connections. So keep telling us what you want. Keep telling us where you want that to be, because we keep that information from a service planning perspective, transit planners and community engagement. And when the time is right for your jurisdiction or your area or your network, to have a service change, we will know what the public is telling us is important for their area. And we know there's lots of demand related to the city of Seattle for some of these frequency investments, new connections, and we're going to be coming to different neighborhoods in Seattle in the next couple of years to have these conversations. It takes way longer than anyone wants for some of these to come online, but it's really important to do so hand in hand with the public to really listen and hear and create those investments that they'll use. So that's the process. It goes to King County Council. If we change just a little bit on either end of each route, it has to get approved by our policymakers. And then we design the system and the infrastructure and hire the staff and put it out twice a year.
We did get a shout out for one of the new routes that was established recently, 61 from Lake City to Greenwood. Listener says, it starts a block from my house and the turnaround point is right next to my primary place of work. It's like it was made just for me. So we have at least really one very happy customer in the Soundside listening audience. Before we go, I'm by the way, my name is Libby Dankman. This is Soundside, and you're listening to Michelle Allison, General Manager for King County Metro, answering your questions about bus routes. Another Soundside Text Club member asked, how much does fare enforcement cost, and how much does it increase revenue? This listener says that it seems unnecessarily hostile and like a potential money sink. What's your response to that?
Great question. Fare enforcement is an important part of our system for a couple of reasons. One, it's one way that we have presence. Part of our code of conduct is to pay your fare, and our fares span, if you were under the age of 19, our fares are free, right? So the conduct there is just tapping your card. If you are full fare payment, it's $3. And again, tapping your card. It's part of our code of conduct, how we want you to engage in the system. So that's part of our fare enforcement, is to ensure that people are doing that action that's asked of them as they engage with our system. It's also part of presence, people to see if people are okay, to provide another person on that coach that can help the operator or the riders should they need it. Fare enforcement is not necessarily a moneymaker. That's not how we see it. Fares are 10% or less of our system, but it is an important part of how we engage. What I would also say in the fare conversation, although it's not necessarily the most significant way that we are funded, that's through sales tax, it is an important part because we have really important business relationships with our major employers, and they pay a significant portion of our fares. And so we want to ensure that we are capturing those dollars because it's a benefit for their employees to have a subsidized transit trip, and it helps our bottom line to receive those dollars no matter how much a percentage they make of our system. It is an important revenue component from that perspective. So remember who's paying the bulk of those fares. It's those major employers who are providing transit benefit. And it's also another way for us to say, this is our expectation for how you engage in the system. What I would also say is, if you are unable to pay a fare, we have a lot of ways through our Orca Lift program and our human service program where we want to connect you with the right fare payment type, be it subsidized or free, but we want you to engage in the system by showing that you have done that work, tapping your card, whoever pays for it on the back end. We have lots of answers to those questions, but we just want some of that behavior to show up on the system consistently.
Final question. New York City Mayor Zoran Mamdani made a campaign promise to make fares free on buses. What would it take to do the same thing in the Puget Sound region? I mean, I know that King County Councilmember Rod Dembowski had asked for a pilot program to explore free transit. What would that take, and what would that look like if King County went in that direction?
Couple of things there. This is a question that's asked many different times in different transit agencies, and a couple of different pilot programs have given different inputs to the answer to that. And it would mean a lot of money. You need to find additional dollars to fund that service. And also, when we go out to the public, as we have many, many times, and we say, would you rather free or something else? Time and time again, the answer is give us better service. Better service actually has a value to it. It has some consistency to it. If I know I can get to my job faster or to my daycare reliably, those are things that also mean more to me than that $3, $1 fare. fare. And so there is this conversation about investments into the system. You want your system to be very frequent, very reliable, and very safe, which takes resources. Fares can be part of that resource discussion when you have it as the whole. And that's where we would like to see a more frequent, reliable, safe service. And fares are part of that paradigm versus making it free, which would mean you would need to take resources to pay for that operation, which probably means you're shrinking something else that people want from their service. So I would offer a better framework is real high quality service instead of a fare-free system.
Michelle Allison, General Manager of King County Metro, answering your bus questions. Even individual route requests, Michelle. I don't know if you expected that today. You probably get it all the time.
I love it.
But people are ambitious with the way to get to you. So this is one way.
It's a great party trick when people find out where I work. It's often like, so about that 48, right? So you have lots of different people have relationships with their buses and their bus routes. That's important to us. That's why we keep riders and grow riders. And we know it really matters when we make those changes. I love talking about this and I love hearing directly from folks. So thanks for having me on. Love to do it anytime.
Thanks for listening to Soundside. Don't forget you can listen live on KUOW 94.9 Seattle at noon and 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, or anytime right here online at KUOW.org, or of course on your favorite podcast app.